everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Oner podcast, asterisk. It's the only podcast on the internet where we break down and review films all in one big long take. I'm Austin Archer, and with me, as always, is my childhood next door neighbor and lifelong best friend,
Grammar England.
asterisk.
Asterisk. The new Wonder Podcast.
The new, yeah. Okay, so we are talking about Thunderbolts this week. They did another Marvel.
They did.
They're back with I wore a yellow beanie because I couldn't think of what else to wear, and I was like, this movie, the logo was like very yellow.
Yeah.
And I
That's
couldn't
good.
yeah.
I wore this is kind of I'm just making it. I'll just say that I meant to do this, but it really didn't. But this is my son's. This is the high school team that they play.
So it's like a little league
So
team.
Yeah, it's Maple Mountain. They're the Golden Eagles, that's where they get the name the Thunderbolts.
Right.
It's from the Little League team. And I coached my son's football team. And the first year we didn't win a game, but the second year we won 2. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I could relate. I was like, oh, but the kids had fun. They loved it. I tried. Yeah.
I have a hard time believing that a soccer team with both Yelena and Natasha Romanoff didn't win any games. Like, those girls can kick someone's head in. And I got to imagine that at least those two girls would be good enough to dominate on the soccer. Like, how are you going to be a literal Black Widow and not be able to kick a soccer
ball? Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they were good and nobody else really cared,
But Little League sports goes, all it takes is like one kid to be great.
It really is. It's kind of crazy. If you have one good kid, you can be the best team. Because it's crazy.
Most kids suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is one of our movies that we talked about on our episode that we did near the beginning of the year, where we did predictions for the year. We were talking about predictions for the biggest films. This was one of them we talked about. My prediction for this film, if I remember correctly, I didn't actually go back and check this time, but I think I said, like, my prediction is that I'm going to like this movie more than most of the other movies in recent Marvel memory.
Yes.
But I don't know if that means that it's going to, like, save the franchise for me or get me locked back in.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, I was correct. And I still wound up pleasantly surprised with how much I did enjoy watching Thunderbolts.
Nice.
What about you?
Yeah, I think that was your correction. I watched that today. Or I mean, I think that was your prediction.
Yeah.
And I watched that today. My prediction was that it would be better than Captain America in both critical praise and box office. Now, I'm half right. It's definitely better in critical praise. The box office, we'll see. It did not beat it in its opening weekend.
Right.
It's pretty far off, but it's also with that good word of mouth. We'll see where it goes. But I don't think it's looking like I was wrong in that prediction. I gotta
say, I'm surprised by that. When I heard that it didn't beat Captain America in the opening weekend, I was like, well, what? Like, is Sinners still pulling that much?
Yeah.
That
Sinners it only dropped like 28%, which is crazy good. Like, it was like 33 million or something. So
I guess The Accountant 2 is still a pretty big draw, I guess.
I think too, it's just that Captain America has the draw of Captain America. Like, he's been in movies. I mean, they've been in some movies too, but I think his draw, was probably bigger. You've got Red Hulk that, it kind of had a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like, even it's crazy. Like, a sequel can be it could be way worse than the first movie, but it usually does better just because it's a sequel and people kind of know what they're getting into, right?
Yeah.
Like, you look at sequels for the box office, and a lot of times the sequel outperforms the first one, even if it's not as good, general feeling of maybe it's not as good. But so I think that this feels almost more like a new. I know everybody's been there, but this is their first movie together. So
and this is kind of a sequel for a lot of characters that come from movies that aren't that great, movies or TV shows that like a lot of the characters here that are being revisited are from movies. Like, nobody really liked Black Widow, and a lot of our characters are from Black Widow. And then, like, Ghost is from the first the second Ant-Man movie, and it's sort of like, it's been a long kind of like what's his name in Captain America, the Brainiac guy,
Yeah, that guy.
that actor. It's been so long since the last time we saw him, we're like, "Oh, yeah, him." And
Yeah.
then, like, Wyatt Russell is from a TV show that's
Yeah.
that's kind of okay, and
Yeah.
so it's like it's a sequel for a lot of characters that come from properties that were just sort of like, "Okay, sure, why not? I guess it's you again."
Yeah.
And, yeah, and
Yeah.
so I I think with the word of mouth being so good, with the reviews being so good, this
Yes.
could pick up in
Yeah.
subsequent weekends. It could even maybe grow, who knows?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's rare, but it's
yeah,
so we're filming this on a Thursday.
yeah,
So this weekend, because it's the second weekend, it'll be very interesting. If a movie drops 50%, that's pretty average. So if it's less than 50%, I think that's pretty good. And Sinners is one of those that it's crazy how little it's dropping. But yeah, I think it will be a good second weekend because I saw it and I'm telling everybody I really liked it. So
yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. We will get into a plot breakdown, so
yes.
spoilers if you have not seen Thunderbolts, go to the movie theater and
Yeah.
see Thunderbolts. It's weird to be telling people to go support Marvel, like it's like,
So
oh, go
true.
support this little company needs your
Yeah.
help. But because I don't know how genuinely I don't know how I feel about that ethically because I want to support movie theaters and the
Right.
movie industry,
Right.
but I don't actually know if I wanna continue encouraging this never-ending TV show that I still am
Yeah.
not I'm not like back in where I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah.
guys, I'm back." What I will say is I enjoyed watching this movie,
Yeah.
and I feel like what worked about this movie in general for me is it felt like what used to work in phases 1 through 3, where
Yeah.
every once in a while they would give a director free reign to sort of do something unique with one of the movies, like
Right.
Taika Waititi with Thor Ragnarok, or
Yep.
like James Gunn with Guardians of the Galaxy,
Yeah.
where every once in a while a director would get to come in. Even the Russos with Captain America: Winter Soldier, where
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was sort of a stamp on it. And you definitely felt Joss Whedon's stamp for better and or worse. There's the
Right.
good
Right.
aspects of Whedon and the less good aspects of Whedon, but that's what this movie felt like, is that they
Yeah.
actually let the creative team just focus on making a movie rather than what it's felt like for a while now is, and I've seen a lot of people talk about this movie in this way, where like every Marvel movie that comes out feels like it has this desperation of like the future of the franchise depends on people
Yeah.
liking this movie, and
Yeah.
there's this desperation from the studio of like, "It's cool again, right? Like, we did it. We're back, right? Marvel's back."
Yeah.
And, I didn't feel that desperation as much while watching Thunderbolts, and I
No.
didn't also feel like the studio was pinning the future of the franchise
Yeah.
on this everything needed to come together in this movie. It felt like the creative team was able to just focus on just telling a good story with
Yeah.
interesting characters and,
Yeah.
good cinematography and well staged,
Yep.
action sequences,
Yeah.
and just focusing on the nuts and bolts of it, and I enjoyed that. Now, I will say
Yeah.
that there's a lot to that being said, there's a lot to nitpick here, and there's
Oh
a
yeah.
lot
Oh
to
yeah.
make fun of, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. There's
Mhm.
definitely stuff. I totally agree though. So I don't know when it was. I mean, when Bob Iger came back on and is running Disney again, um, they kind of realized Marvel realized that we're making too many TV shows and we're not focusing on things enough. And I think this is kind of the first product because Bob Iger said this is what we want Marvel to be now, right? Like this is the new one that we want to kind of get back to, kind of like you were talking about, right? It kind of feels a little bit more like the earlier days.
He said this
Um,
about Thunderbolts, that he wants this to be what
yes,
Marvel is?
yeah,
Interesting.
kind of like he wants it to be more. And I'd have to find the quote. It was either him or Kevin Feige, but I think it was him. Um, but they've said like we're making too much. We want to focus on you know a little bit less so that we can put more focus on some of these things.
Just
This
make a
movie,
good movie, yeah,
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 exactly.
mhm, yeah.
Like the thing that I loved about this movie, as which I'm going to compare this a lot to Captain America: Brave New World, because they came out very in a similar time frame, but this movie Thunderbolts felt so much more intentional, like this is the movie we want to make, this is how we want it to happen, and that's how it happened. You know, like the story is very, very cohesive. Like it fits together really, really well. Whereas Brave New World just felt so hodgepodge. Like it felt so kind of soulless.
Well, it's a
Uh,
movie that had to go do a lot of reshoots and,
it
and
did.
again, there's that desperation in that
Yeah.
movie where even in the
Yeah.
marketing of the film where it's like, you can't just
Yeah.
trust us to show up. You have to show us Red Hulk. And then the whole movie, we're watching a movie that's teasing out something that we already know because you spoiled
Yeah.
it in the posters and in the
Yep.
billboards and in the
Yeah.
trailers. So like, there's no, like the whole structure of this movie doesn't make sense anymore because it's
Yeah.
kind of like, and I'm going to spoil this right now because I think it's integral to how we talk about this film.
Yeah.
It's like if the marketing for Thunderbolts had said Thunderbolts asterisk, and then there had been an asterisk at the bottom of the poster that said
Mhm.
the new Avengers. And it'd
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
oh, well, okay, then, then so this is an Avengers movie or
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the fact that and that is sort of the big that's what the asterisk. Do you say
Yeah.
asterisk or asterisk?
As
Asterisk?
asterisk? I don't know, now it sounds weird to me.
I don't
The asterisk. Asterisk.
asterisk.
Whatever.
Asterisk. I just
Whatever
looked
it
it up.
is.
Asterisk.
There
Uh
you go.
But that's what it is the new Avengers, which by the way,
Yeah.
I'm just spoiler for my opinion, I don't like that. My personal feeling is this is a good Thunderbolts movie. If
Yeah.
you're telling me this is the newest Avengers movie, this is not a very good Avengers movie, in
Well,
my
yeah.
opinion. Yeah, but
I I
it's a good Thunderbolts movie.
right.
It's yeah,
I think your opinion is valid. I actually think it's funny.
yeah,
I think it's good because they're really not. I mean, yeah, in the end they become the Avengers, but they're really not the Avengers. And like it was a whole ploy, like it just worked out that way. So I almost feel like it's like another joke for the
yeah.
movie. And I actually think, "Oh, that's really funny." Like that's actually pretty clever that it worked out that way. But from an outside perspective, like I have people who haven't seen it and they're confused like, "Well, so this is an Avengers movie? Like this seems such a ploy to get people to do it." And I think it's kind of is serving both parties, it is kind of a ploy, but I thought it was funny. Like I think, "Oh
I
yeah, that's
like
pretty
I
funny."
like that interpretation. I like the
Yeah.
interpretation of it as because I think that thematically fits, that, like,
Yeah.
it's a joke, that, like,
Yeah.
obviously, these are not the Avengers, like,
Yeah.
they're far from it. They are absolutely the B-Vengers or even the
Yeah.
C-Vengers. Like,
Yeah.
they are the bottom of the barrel when it comes to
Yeah.
who's left in the power dynamic of the MCU. Like, we've got Doctor Strange and Spider-Man and Ant-Man and
Yeah.
Thor still out there
Yeah.
running around. Like, this is kind of like if the team was oops all Hawkeye.
Yeah.
It's like it's just kind of like, oh yeah, this is not,
Yeah.
the best material that's left in the
No.
Marvel Cinematic Universe. But if it is a joke to say, yeah, they're the Thunderbolts,
Yeah.
asterisk, the new Avengers, which is what they're
Yeah.
being marketed as, but they're not the Avengers.
Yeah.
I like that. The reason why I sort of bump on it is because I could see it going either way, where Marvel's like, surprise, this is the Avengers now, like that,
Yeah.
and I, I don't know. We can talk about that when we get to that
Yeah.
point in the
Yeah.
plot. But there are reasons why I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
but
I think it's totally fine.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I think I like your interpretation of it there.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I said, as we go through this, there are going to be points where I'm going to point out things that bother me and that I don't think are great. But I think overall, in a Marvel movie, you can always do that. You can always point at
Yeah.
things that are a little bit
Yes.
lazy or a little bit like a little like plot hole or something that's written in a way that's like, okay, that's just sort of there very conveniently.
Yeah.
Um, that all exists in this movie. I think that the test of a Marvel movie for me is, am I enjoying watching it enough that I'm not actively distracted by that stuff? Am I
Yeah.
invested emotionally enough that
Yes.
I'm along for the ride?
Yeah.
And I was for the most part watching this
Yeah.
movie. I really like where we start.
Yeah.
I think it tells a very cohesive beginning, middle, and end story about
Yes.
and I also really like that this movie took a big swing emotionally and that it tells a
Yeah.
story about kind of the emotional well-being and mental health of these characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was a huge that's a huge thing that I think really paid off. That they took a subject matter that is important to a lot of people and they treated it really well. I felt like it was it's ultimately depression or, your mental health, overall. And I like that they had Florence Pugh be the main character,
Mhm.
and then also having Lewis Pullman, who looks exactly like Tom Holland. I'm sorry,
Sure.
he is just like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But whatever. I was very, very surprised with him. I thought he did an awesome job. But having their story kind of be the central part, and then everybody else connecting to it. Everybody else is going through trauma and is going through hard times emotionally. And I think it all fit really, really well from a structural standpoint. And I think it really paid off. And that's why I really enjoyed it too, is because like you're not just making it about the end of the world, you're making it about the characters specifically and
Yeah.
their personal problems.
Well, and this isn't the first time that the MCU has done this, and it's
Yeah.
I always really like when they do take the time to do this. They
Yeah.
did it in Iron Man 3, where
Yeah.
we really explored Tony Stark's PTSD after the Avengers film, where
Right.
like we see that the effect that it's had on his psyche, witnessing a wormhole open up
Right.
over New York City and an entire alien army come out of it, and him having to like throw a nuke through the wormhole to,
Yeah.
that he realized like, okay, I'm up against things that are a lot bigger than
Yeah.
just kind of terrorists, and I'm up against intergalactic forces, and witnessing what that was doing, the him having panic attacks and things like that.
Yeah.
And then we do it with Captain America with Steve Rogers. We talk about
Yeah.
what it the toll that it takes on him emotionally. We talked about that in the Winter Soldier
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
And I like when the MCU has been willing to delve into, you know, how being a person like this with these abilities or with certain powers can be isolating. They've done it
Yeah.
some with Thor in some of the later installments of Thor, of kind of exploring what
Yeah.
does he want to be beyond. If he's not going to be king of Asgard, who is he?
Yeah.
And I as many flaws as Love and Thunder might have, I do kind of like the idea of giving him a renewed purpose in being a father at the end of
Yeah.
that movie,
Yeah.
and doing that. That seems like a growth for the character and a new place for him to go and a new
Right.
area. It gives him a sort of a renewed purpose. But yeah, I like that this movie was, you know, properly about mental health and the mental
Yes.
health of these
Yeah.
characters from the very beginning. We
Yeah.
open with a shot of Florence Pugh in what is feels like it's alluding visually to a suicide attempt, but we can
Yeah.
tell as the audience that that's not what's going on. But
Yeah.
her monologue sounds she's giving some monologue about how humdrum and droll and boring and predictable her
Yeah.
life has become, and not knowing what her purpose is. And as she's giving that monologue, sitting on the edge of a tall building, and she walks off the building.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know from context
Yeah.
and reference that
Yeah.
like she's probably doing and she's the main character of the movie. She's not going
Yeah.
to die here. She's probably on a mission, but
Yeah.
they're definitely giving us a visual,
Yeah. Yeah,
cue.
they're making that kind of just, or they're making that connection.
Yeah.
But also shout out to Florence Pugh, who really did that. She
She
really
did
jumped
that?
off. Yeah, she jumped off the. I don't know how far she fell, but she really jumped off of that building. I mean, she was hooked up to wires and everything, and she wasn't the one base jumping, but um, they had there's a bunch of marketing stuff out there.
More
Uh,
like Florence cute Cruise.
exactly.
Yeah.
She is going to take over Tom
She
Cruise's own
said
stunt thing.
she said, "I know Tom Cruise is getting old. Don't worry, y'all. I got this.
I got
Check
this.
check me out."
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's pretty dope that she did
Yeah.
that.
Pretty
And
amazing she did it.
it's a great looking stunt. There's a lot of really cool practical action that
Yes.
looks great in this movie. I I do like this opening sequence. I love the
Yes.
overhead hallway shot of her.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Kicking the crap out of everybody. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah,
And this is the thing, we'll get into this more later, but I really, really enjoy just fight choreography between
yeah,
two people. Like, and it's cool when you can add a superpower into it, it's okay. Like Ghost, I thought they worked really well, but we'll get to it. But when the scene when Sentry comes and he beats everybody up, that was far less interesting to me than every other fight scene,
sure.
because of how like I just love the hand to hand, like the real physical fighting of
Yeah,
people doing things like, and you can add things in there. You could do wire work and stuff, but Like this fight scene was really cool and it was well choreographed, and it's much more engaging to me when there's less VFX going on.
Well, there are also stakes when people aren't
Yes.
immortal, and when
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
talk about this with Superman and stuff, but it's like that's why Superman has to go up against other godlike
Yeah.
figures.
Yeah.
He's got to go up. He's got to like meet his match a lot of the time, and
Yeah.
oftentimes he does. It's got to be gods on gods,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it definitely feels like there are more stakes when there's people who will
Yeah.
get hurt if they get shot. Uh, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's doing some mission for Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She's uh, but as and the mission doesn't really matter. It's more about her kind of narrating this thing of like, oh yeah, this I do this, I get the orders, I show up, you say this, oh please don't.
Yeah.
And it's a
Yeah,
yeah.
and she kinda wants to get out, and she
Mhm.
goes and visits, David Harbour.
Yep.
Well, and, Julie Louis-Dreyfus is gonna get impeached. That's like a really something that sets her character up, like, she's desperate to get rid of everything,
Yeah.
so that she doesn't get impeached and she doesn't go to jail.
Yeah, and
That's her motivation.
she has been kind of operating her own sort of
Yeah,
shadow version of Shield, where she has
yeah,
these operatives in the field, and it's I think that the name for Wyatt Russell's superhero character is US Agent.
yeah, I think
I
that's
I
it,
think
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's his superhero name. He once was Captain America, and then he
yeah,
lost the mantle because he was too angry. He
yeah,
was too
killed a
mean.
guy in public,
It
yeah,
killed a guy. Now he's US agent, and
yeah,
she's got Ghost from, the
yep,
Ant-Man series, and she's got, Taskmaster from Black Widow,
yeah,
Yelena from Black Widow, and she's
yeah,
been, I guess, having people go and do covert ops for her, but
yeah,
as she's getting investigated, and they're looking into her, budget and spending, she's trying to get rid of all of the evidence that she's been doing
yeah,
anything that might be unconstitutional or illegal. And
yeah.
yeah, so yeah, but Yelena goes and visits
Yeah,
her
her dad.
dad.
And I thought this was good because she is trying to get out, and then David Harbour, is basically very, very jealous of her. Like,
Yeah,
he is just like he would give anything to be one of these people that goes out on these missions and
he'd
everything,
love
which
to be
is
back in the game.
yeah, which
Yeah,
is really great. I mean, that sets up they're on opposite sides of, the spectrum. She is depressed, wanting to get out. He's depressed, but because he wants to get in, and he would
what do
do
you think
anything,
about what do you think about David Harbour in this movie?
I think he was really good. I think he was really
Okay,
funny. There was one time when I was like, "All right, that didn't need to be there." The unnecessary humor that comes in emotional moments. There was one
sure.
part. But I thought David Harbour's always fun to watch, and I actually thought when he needed to be emotional, it worked. And I think
Yeah.
that was the important part. But he was pretty funny the rest of the time. What did you think of him?
Oh, I don't know. I think I totally get enjoying his performance in this movie. To me, it
Yeah.
was a little bit grating the way his character was written. I just kind of found him
Yeah.
a little bit obnoxious. And also, I maybe it's like I just don't I'm not sure that Harbor pulls the accent off great. I think that the
Yeah.
accent is like pretty I also just like it's always weird to me when Yelena and her dad are talking to each other and they're both speaking English
Speaking
in like
English.
in these like thick Russian accents. And I'm like, yeah, neither one of these actors are Russian.
Yeah.
And I think Florence Pugh's accent is a little bit better than David Harbour's, but
Yeah.
neither one of them are like great. And it just makes for a viewing experience where I'm just kind of like I but you
Yeah.
but it's one of those things where you just kind of have to accept that like David Harbour and Florence Pugh are not going to learn Russian for this
No.
movie,
No.
and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
not going to have them speaking Russian for like, a decent amount of the runtime of this film because
Yeah.
they're just not going to do that
No.
in a
That's
Marvel
and
movie. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, I totally see that too. I think Florence Pugh's accent is much more acceptable than David Harbour. David Harbour's is pretty thick.
yeah,
He's laying it on pretty thick, which is kind of crazy because in Black Widow,
mhm,
the beginning of the movie, he's speaking in an American accent.
yeah.
I know that you can kind of like do that, and I'm sure that's hard, but like I that's I
I
don't know,
guess like
like
when he's like
so
deep
weird.
undercover, yeah, like when he's like,
Yeah.
but also it's like the fact that Scarlett Johansson like never, I guess because she got out when she was younger, or I can't remember what
Yeah, I can't remember, but
yeah.
whatever.
but whatever the justification is, it's sort of
Yeah.
like how Scarlet Witch had a full-on Eastern
Yeah.
European accent in Avengers: Age of Ultron, and then, uh,
Yeah. By
just
Civil War, she was
she
not
just
really
phased
there.
it out.
Yeah.
She just slowly over the films just incrementally phased it out.
And
Um,
I thought that was a good idea. Go
and
for it.
I
Yep.
I think that they should maybe if the Thunderbolts are gonna continue being in movies, I think that it's high
Yeah.
time that Yelena
David
uh,
Harbour.
and David Harbour just sort of phase out those just bit
Yeah.
by bit, ease off of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so, does anything happen before she gets called on this next mission into this
Well,
next
they go
location?
you see Bucky is kind of investigating
Right.
Julie Louis-Dreyfus and and
Bucky's a congressman now.
yeah, he's a congressman and he gets to her assistant.
Yeah.
And that's that just the assistant and him like she kind of helps Bucky. But then they get basically Yelena's like I want out and she's like okay, one more job and you're out.
Yeah.
And she's like okay, so she's like you got to go kill Ghost. She's trying to steal all these secrets. So they go to this one place. It's in the
Did
middle of
it
the
ever
desert.
did it say which desert we're in the movie? I didn't catch
No,
that.
it was filmed in Utah though. That's the
Right,
Utah desert.
it
So
looks very much like the Mojave Desert,
yeah,
like, it looks very much but I was like, we were in DC, and
yeah, yeah,
there's a sequence coming up in this movie where David Harbour drives in his limo from Maryland to wherever
yeah,
this location is in the
yeah,
desert, and I was like, "In that car, that is a week-long drive to the Mojave Desert. Easy, like, easy." And
yeah,
and I was like I was trying to think, like, where else in America could that be that's closer to the East Coast?
yeah,
And I
yeah.
don't know. I don't
I don't know.
yeah,
Well, and he said like, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it really is in Utah.
yeah,
So
and
I
then
mean, like,
later in the film, they drive in a truck from that same location to New York City, and I'm like, again, these are both, like, week-long drives.
yeah,
Like, these are,
it's the
and
magic of editing.
yep, and I do like the pace of this film. I
Yeah,
think this movie
yeah,
moves at a nice pace, and again, that's one of those things where I was just like, "We're doing some time jumps with
yeah,
the car traveling that I could have used, like, an Avengers jet or something to get us
yeah,
somewhere
yeah,
faster,"
yeah,
because I just am like, "I'm sorry, if they're in that car,
yeah,
they can only move so fast." And
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, but they get to this facility and Yelena is trying to kill Ghost. And then when they get in, Taskmaster and US agent show up
mhm,
and they're all trying to kill each other.
yeah,
And ultimately, Taskmaster does get shot in the head pretty quickly.
which is kind of a shock.
Yeah,
I
I
was
was like, are they going to bring her back? Like, that's
yeah.
pretty crazy.
Personally, I I didn't like that. I was like, "Oh, man, I was kind of excited for Taskmaster."
I was a little too. I was like, really? They're really killing her off. Like, wow, that's
Mostly just because she's the only other person who's, like, got something different going on. Like,
yeah.
in this group of ragtag misfits, we've got 3 guys who all basically have the same thing. We've
Yes.
got US Agent and, Winter
Red
Soldier
Guardian,
and
yeah,
Red Guardian who are all basically the
just super soldiers.
powers-wise yeah, they all took the serum.
Yeah,
And then we've got one girl that went to the Black Widow place,
yeah,
the, Red Sparrow training, whatever they call
yeah,
that. And then we've got Ghost, who actually has a different set of powers.
yes,
Taskmaster would have been our only other person who, like, she has a similar set of skills
yeah,
to
yeah,
Yelena because she's got something else going on. And so I was just for the sake of variety and
yeah,
diversity in the group, I was kind of like,
yeah,
oh, bummer.
yeah.
Like,
That she could have done some cool stuff. And this fight scene is really cool. I had a lot of
yeah.
fun with this because
Yeah,
they're
me
all
too.
going after one person,
Yeah.
and like and Ghost does have a really cool power,
Yeah.
and they use it really well. And I think they use it well throughout the whole movie, which is good.
Hmm.
But this was fun, and they're all trying to fight each other. Then they finally Ghost kills Taskmaster, and shoots her in the head, which is kind of crazy. And then
Yeah.
they all stop, and someone inadvertently lets Bob out of his coffin or whatever he was in, and so Bob is there. And then they're all just trying to figure out. They figure out pretty quickly that this is an incinerator, and they're all supposed to kill each other, or they're gonna die in this fire.
Yeah, so I did like this sequence. I like this action sequence where they're all,
Yeah,
"Well,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
my
yeah,
target, you're my target, you're my
yeah,
target." I think this is fun and it's a well choreographed sequence.
yeah.
But I gotta say, this whole like escape room that
Yes.
Julia Louis Dreyfus puts them in is
Yeah,
pretty like this is one of those things where I was thinking about it in the movie theater. I was going like,
yeah, yeah,
why is there a timer on the wall? Like, and
yeah,
I go,
yeah,
yep, of course it's a movie. They can't just hit a detonator and the bomb goes off. It's
yeah.
always got to be in 3 minutes, this whole
Yes.
room will go. It's like,
Oh,
why?
no.
It's like it's Scott Evil from Austin Powers. Like, I have a gun in my room. In two,
I'll
se-
go shoot him.
I'll shoot him in the head. It'll be done. Scott, you just don't get it, do you?
That's so true. That really is exactly what that scene was.
Because
That
it's
the
just
escape was. Yeah.
because it's just like she like it'd be one thing if we found out later that Julia Louis Dreyfus had constructed a scenario to see if she could bring them together as a team. That was like if it was revealed later in the plot that she like was giving them a puzzle to solve as a team,
Mhm.
and that's why there's like, oh, like the power box is here on the wall, and if we reroute the power, then we can
Yeah.
get Ghost out of the room and we can get past this sonic shield. We've got a
Yeah.
timer on the wall. We've got there's pieces inside these boxes that will help us solve this puzzle before we're
Yeah.
incinerated. And if we found out later on that she was, I don't know, but it just the way it's constructed in the film is literally like she's done a terrible job at
Yeah.
like she puts them in this room where she locks them underground in the desert in a black site that is set to incinerate all, and it's like, don't put a timer on the wall and
Yeah.
don't put the power source for the room in the
In the
room.
room.
Just incinerate them.
Yeah.
Movie over, but the movie can't do that. So
No.
I just wish that somehow the writers of the film could be a little more thoughtful about like, how is our team going to solve this problem rather
Yeah.
than just going, the solution is just right there. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, here's the off button
Yeah.
for
They
yeah,
could have honestly had Bob do something. I
sure.
mean, that actually probably would have been the better solution is like they realize, "Oh my gosh, this guy is super powerful." But I mean, I was willing to overlook it
Yeah.
because like it was dumb, but also like it wasn't the dumbest thing that I've seen in a movie.
No,
It's pretty standard
yeah, and
stupid.
it's
So,
exactly. That's one
yeah.
of those things where I'm like, this is gonna be stuff like this is gonna exist in pretty much every single Marvel movie,
Yeah.
and for some reason, like you just can't get around it. I
No.
did notice it, and I think it's funny. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
they wind up finding the power source for the room. They're able to reroute it. Ghost is able to open a door, get them out before the incinerator happens. And then they find like an elevator shaft where they're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, there's no power in here, so we can't call the elevator. But how do we get up this shaft?
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of like this little bit where US agent does a big jump to see how
Yeah.
high he can see if he can jump out of the elevator shaft, and he
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
And Bob comes up with the idea that if they all go back to back, they can
Yeah.
kind of shimmy up the elevator shaft. And I thought, I kind of like these sequences in this movie of them being just sort of an underpowered
Yeah.
ragtag team that
Yeah.
needs to kind
Yeah.
of,
They've got
begrudgingly
to
work together. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that sequence was pretty funny.
Yeah.
They ultimately do get up and Wyatt Russell has to jump to the opening, but it causes everybody else to fall, but they all catch each other and then they all get out. Um, but yeah, instantly like none of them like each other.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so we missed a part that's actually
Yeah.
pretty important because after the explosion goes off and before they get in the elevator shaft, like when the explosion happens, Yelena is holding or
Correct.
no, she gets knocked out and then she wakes up and she's remembering something from her past where she had this girl come out and then some Russian guy comes and kills the girl. And this is obviously a traumatic experience for her. But this was like her first test, to
Correct.
become a Red Sparrow or whatever. And she's there and she's trying to figure out what's going on. And she looks over and she sees Bob. And then like the vision ends and she wakes up and they're looking at each other and just kind of like she kind of shakes it off as like, what was that?
Mhm.
Um, and then they go to the elevator shaft. And when they all get up, Bob touches Wyatt Russell, and Wyatt Russell has a vision at that point of him watching. He's supposed to be watching his kid, but his kid is crying and he's not doing anything. He's just paying attention to himself. And this
He's
whole
looking at
time
stories
about himself.
about how he's like a disgraced,
Yeah,
yeah, he was disgraced in the
hero.
public eye, and yeah,
Yeah. And he's like, he's not this whole time he's been talking about how great he is and like how he manages being a father and a superhero, and all
yeah.
that.
I liked Wyatt Russell's character a lot more in
Yeah.
this movie than I did in the
Oh yeah.
series,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I like that they play on his arrogance. That like
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that when they're all putting it together earlier on, that like, oh, we were all sent here to kill each other because she's trying
Yeah.
to kill all of us. He's like, well, not me though.
Yeah.
No, he's like, not me. He's like, I was sent here to kill all of you. And he's like, but like,
Yeah.
I'm not. He's like, I'm a very important asset,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that he can't accept that he could be just as expendable as everyone else because he's
Yeah.
got this. And I kind of like that they play on that. His character flaw is his ego and
Yes.
his inability to be honest about his shortcomings.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and I think, in the show and also in Captain America, the first Avenger, the, the doctor tells Steve Rogers this serum is going to make you more of what you are.
yeah,
So if you're a good person, you're going to become an even better person. But it
yeah.
it magnifies everything about you. And Wyatt Russell's character he's totally into himself. And like I did like that about I am totally with you. I liked his character way better in this movie than in the TV show. And I actually thought he played it really, really well because like when the shoe does drop that his wife has left him and took their son, like that part hits pretty hard and he plays it actually really well.
Yeah.
They don't draw much attention to it. You just see it in his face. And I actually was like, that was really, it made an impact. It made the impact that I felt like the filmmaker wanted it to. So
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this movie's showing us that all of these characters have
yeah,
things that are troubling them and things in their pasts that are, I think that we could have maybe maybe there is a moment that got edited out of the movie where we find a moment for Ghost, and
yeah,
because
yep,
Ghost, we definitely know a lot about what Ghost has been through from what we see in Ant-Man and the
yeah,
Wasp, which is
yeah,
like she's got a very hard existence and a hard life. And her condition is like hard to live
yeah,
with.
yeah,
And so, maybe there was a scene of that, or maybe they just figured you already know that about her.
yeah,
And they'll give us more insight into some of these other characters. But yeah, they get out, and then Julia Louis-Dreyfus has shown up because she's found out that they made it out. She's shown up with this whole task force to
mhm,
take them out. But this is another sequence where I'm like, I don't get what her character wants here, because she goes up to the main general who's sending men in to confront
yeah,
the team, and she goes non-lethal, non-lethal, and he's
yeah,
like, what? He's like, I got him set to lethal, and she's like, no, non-lethal. And looking, and I think in the moment I was kind of like, oh yeah, sure. And then later I was like, wait, but she was just going to incinerate them.
yeah,
Why? And the movie doesn't ever justify why all of a sudden she's like, don't kill them, just detain them if you can. It's like, why would
yeah.
that all of a sudden be the? Is it because she found out that Bob was there?
Yes.
That's what
Yes,
it is,
that
probably.
is what it is. She found out that Bob was there and because she's like, "Who is that guy?" And then she's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I need him. He actually lived from the procedure." And then I also think it might have been like optics, like people knew about it. So
Yeah,
she couldn't she if she tries to kill them, then it looks like she's guilty, whereas if she could just save them and kill them later and make it look like an accident, it kind of saves her, right? So
sure.
it does kind of make sense.
Yeah,
I'll give him that one because yeah, everybody because her assistant's like people have already picked it up. Like they're picking up the story and they're running a new, they're talking about it already. So
yeah,
and then, but
yeah,
yeah,
but
it's whatever.
yeah, but the Thunderbolts get out of this situation. They sort of fight their way out, and one by one, they're like coming back for each other. And there's always these different sequences where it looks like, oh, one of them's gonna abandon the others and
Yeah,
go out for themselves, but they keep coming back and helping each other. And
yeah,
they sort of put on the clothes of the military, got the strike
yeah,
force that's coming in, and they get out by disguising themselves, and they get into a truck, and then Bob goes back to distract the
yeah,
military people to make it, so that they can get out clean.
yeah,
And it's been clear pretty much from the jump that like Bob, there's something going on with Bob. Bob is special in
yeah,
some way,
yeah,
and Bob winds up getting shot a bunch by
yeah,
machine guns, and we find out that Bob is super powered and
yeah,
uh
and very super powered.
very super powered. I kind of like this. I kind of like the way that his body like flies into the air kind of
Yeah.
uncontrolled, and that it's almost
Yeah.
like the powers are not that the powers are he's not in control of them. They're,
Yeah.
separate
Yeah,
from him.
he doesn't even know how powerful he is. Yeah.
Yeah, and that the powers almost have a mind of their own. But yeah, the Thunderbolts
Yeah.
get away in a truck because Bob's distracting everybody. But when Bob comes back down, he hits the ground so hard that he causes a huge avalanche, and the truck that they're in rolls over, and then they have to
Yeah.
basically go out on foot from there.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
then yeah, the Red Guardian comes and picks him up.
and his
And
limo.
yeah, which is also this was definitely like the way that he found out about it was he was driving the limo of Julia Louise Dreyfus, and she says the whole plan, and it's like that was really convenient.
Yeah,
Like,
there's a lot of listen,
yeah.
like I said, I enjoyed watching this movie because I
Yes.
enjoyed the
Yes.
characters and I enjoyed
Yeah.
I thought that like the construction of it was like I could
Yeah.
but when you sit back and think about a lot of like the way that stuff happens here, again, it's like, so wait, she picked he happened to be her limo.
Yeah.
Wouldn't she know who her driver is everywhere she
Yeah. Yeah.
goes? And she just picks some random limo service that's called Red Guardian limo service.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
or is he a driver for who knows? But he drives in his crappy red limo from
Yeah.
Maryland out to whatever desert this is, and
Yeah.
it seems like he gets there in a day, like it
Yeah.
seems like he gets there in like 12 to 18 hours, which is
Yeah.
impossible. But whatever.
Yeah.
They get in his car, and they have a nice little action sequence here, which is kind of
Yeah.
their first big like team up sequence,
Yeah.
where the military is on their tail, they're shooting at them, and they're kind of getting their butts kicked. They're kind of getting,
Yeah.
you know, uh,
Well, there's 3, like, huge Hummers that are coming
yeah,
after him with huge turrets on it, and
yeah.
they're shooting, and yeah, they're not it doesn't look good for him.
And then Bucky shows up
Yeah.
because Senator Bucky has decided, or Congressman Bucky has decided that he wants to be he back in the game again, and he wants to take on whatever Julia Louis Dreyfus is doing head
Yeah.
on. So he shows up and he does. I also thought that this was a thing that kind of made me go like, huh, because Bucky's got the Winter Soldier like tools that he
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
in Captain America Winter Soldier. But
Right.
I was like, have we seen that gun since Captain America Winter Soldier?
No.
The
No.
gun that he shoots at Nick Fury's car and it makes the car
Yeah.
blow up and
Blow
flip
up.
over. He's got that again, and it's like this movie is just saying like, "Yeah, that's his Winter Soldier gun," but it's like, I
Yeah.
don't think so. I think that his Winter Soldier thing is his arm,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
like, that gun is just something that Hydra gave him for that
Yeah.
specific mission. I don't think that that's just, like, his Winter Soldier gun that he always
No.
has, but then this movie's just sorta like, "Yeah, that's his Winter Soldier thing," and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Why not?"
I did totally give into it because it's cool.
It is cool.
And you know what? He's probably like, "Hey, that thing worked out. I'm gonna use it again." And I thought it was cool. So,
But
that one
I
didn't bother me,
I
but
just
yeah.
think logically, like, does he have that? Like,
Yeah.
sure, I guess this movie's saying that
Yeah.
he does, but why has he not used it since then? Why is this
Yeah.
but
It's a good question,
what
but
there's a few things that they do with the Winter Soldier in this movie where they're just sort of like, eh, remember that? And I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, okay, sure,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
it's
they
another
do.
reason why I'm not like all the way back in. I'm not just like, oh yeah, I'm
Yeah,
back,
yeah.
but yeah, Bucky
Yeah,
shows
no,
up.
I totally agree.
They have a fun little action sequence here. They get away kind of by the skin of their teeth. He really helps out a lot,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they go and
But yeah,
what's
he shoots them. He shoots
yeah,
their car, and they're like, "Oh," and then detains all of them,
yeah,
and they hold up in this, like, abandoned, I don't know, auto shop or something,
yeah,
and that's when the assistant calls Bucky and is like, "Hey," because he's been trying to get the assistant to turn to their side,
mhm,
and she's like, "Hey, this is kinda crazy, like, this." She's got this guy named Bob, right? The assistant's like, she's got this guy named Bob, and it's everything that they have been everything that the Thunderbolts have been telling them is what she says. Like, "Oh, there's this really dangerous guy. You got to be careful." And he's like, "Okay." So he decides that they need to go to New York
yeah.
because everything that they said is true.
I kind of
And
like that. he's got him tied up in this garage.
Yeah.
He's got, like, iron,
Yeah.
bars, wrapped around Red Guardian and US Agent,
Yeah.
you know? I
Yep.
kinda like that little detail that he's, like, tying them up with.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, he's got something for Ghost where she can't, I don't know, phase or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was cool. And one thing we failed to mention before is like, which I thought this was actually really funny. Uh, Wyatt Russell is he's trying to like, oh, I should be the leader of this group. You know why? Because I was 3-time state champ. Go Bears, right? And then Yelena's like, well, I was in a kid soccer team called the Thunderbolts, and we never won a game, right? And so that's why that's why Red Guardian wants to name the team Thunderbolts,
Yeah.
because they kind of use it as a joke. And he's like, yeah, the Thunderbolts, and he's loving it. And he keeps saying the Thunderbolts, and Bucky's like, I don't know what that is. Um,
Also, a big thing for Red Guardian is, like, even when he wants to get back in the earlier scene when he's like, "Oh, I would give anything to be back in,"
yeah,
he's he's initially talking about the thrill of combat and
yeah,
helping people, but then he's like and, like, the praise from the audience and the endorsements and the
yeah,
deals and, like and what he really wants is, like, the money, like, that he would
yeah, yeah,
love to be and so that's a big part of his character is and a big thing about the Thunderbolts is that him and Yelena can't agree on who the Thunderbolts were sponsored by,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and his big thing is kind of like sponsorships, like,
yeah,
he wants to get brand deals done, he wants to
yeah,
be back in the spotlight so that he can be on Wheaties boxes and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um,
He really wants to be on the Wheaties box, which comes up
yeah,
later.
yeah,
But yeah, that's ultimately where they get the Thunderbolts. I think this is really pretty much the midpoint of the movie
yeah.
where they pretty much get a new resolve to go, and they're going to stop. Uh, what is her name? Valentina. Yeah.
Valentina's over in New York, and she is trying to see if she can kind of program Sentry or Bob
Yeah.
into being kind of like her su superhero. She was doing some
Yeah.
project where they were doing something to a lot of different people. Everyone died except for one guy. Bob lived, and they were trying to create a superhuman,
Yeah.
and yeah,
And Bob is really unstable, really
yeah.
mentally unstable.
I
He's had
I
addiction problems, and
yeah.
he definitely has depression, at least, if
It
not more.
feels like to me what the movie is alluding to is bipolar disorder.
Yeah,
Is
yeah, yeah,
what Bob deals with is he's got 2 different aspects to his mental health which swing in extremes where he's got
yeah,
an extreme ego that can be, really, really, kind of, um delusions of grandeur and
yeah,
grandiose and can kind of lead him to fits of mania where he kind of,
yeah,
probably before he had the superpowers, he has ideas like I could fly, I could rule the world, but then you
right,
give a guy like that actual superpowers and what does it do to that aspect of his mental health? And
yeah,
then he's got the other aspect of bipolar disorder, which is there's the mania, there's all the and then there's the
yeah,
depression
yeah,
aspect of it where it swings all the way in the other direction of
yeah,
what does anything matter? Nothing matters. I'm useless. I shouldn't even exist. You
yeah,
know, and there's sort of these two. Well, we come to meet the other one later, but I'd say Sentry is kind of the mania, ego-driven
yes.
aspect of his personality,
Oh, yeah,
and then the other personality I think actually has a name, and I think it is the Void, and
yeah,
that's the other sort of characteristic of Bob's of and it's sort of like if you think about like that same super soldier thing that you said earlier, that it
yeah,
amplifies what's already there. That
yep,
if you think about that with a person like Bob, where he's already got this mental illness that has these extreme swings from feeling
yeah,
like I can fly and feeling like the strongest person in the world, feeling like I can do anything to feeling completely useless. And you supercharge that and superpower that and
yeah,
actually give that the engine of a god and see what that does. And so, yeah, Bob becomes a really interesting character here. And
yeah, yeah, I really liked Bob. I
yeah,
really liked, uh, Lewis Pullman, and, that's his name, right? Yeah,
and his
Lewis
performance
Pullman.
is fantastic.
His
Yeah.
performance is really, really good,
Yeah.
and, but yeah, he gets this was definitely a problem, but whatever, I gave into it. So he is meeting with Valentina, and she is like, she's really buttering him up, like, you are this amazing person, you can do all these amazing things. And then she touches him, and she gets into that like dark space, and she sees her dad getting killed when she lived in Italy when she was a little girl or something. um And so she can definitely seem like she's afraid of him, which I thought was interesting. She's afraid of him, but then her desire to kind of control things takes over, and she still thinks that she can uh, change him to be what she wants him to be, which I thought was a kind of a cool little, character trait. I thought that was nice. But he she basically tells him like, "Oh, you can do all these amazing things," and his training takes like 2 minutes, and
Right.
he's like the best superhero, like all the Avengers combined into one. So
Yeah, and this is kind of where, like, I think this midpoint shift, and again, the movie's moving at a nice clip, but this is where it feels like we're missing maybe some potential time to, even if it feels like it slows stuff down a little bit,
mhm,
just a little bit of, like, maybe something extra in here to also give our characters time to get from, because again, there are
mhm,
the 2 things here in the timeline that I think could be fixed by building things out a little bit are them in the desert waiting
mhm.
for Red Guardian to show up, and maybe that just takes a little longer. Like, there could be a funny sequence where they're, like, walking through the desert and it's been, like, a few days, and they all,
Yeah,
like, have, like, their shirts wrapped around their heads and stuff, and they're, like, and they have to sort of learn to work together because they have to survive in the Mojave Desert together for,
yeah,
like, a
yeah,
few days, and if you can figure out a way in the screenplay to build that out a little bit longer,
right.
then I can believe it. You can do a few things there. You can develop the team dynamic a little bit more, and you can also believably have
Yeah,
that travel time work. And then on their way back, they're driving to New York City, and give us a few days of Valentino working with Bob
yeah, yeah,
to, give our team the time to get there, and also give Bob the time to grow into the character that he's about to be in our final
mhm,
act. But yeah,
yeah,
I do like that we're in the former Avengers Tower, which is the former Stark Tower
yeah,
in New York City, and that's where Valentina is sort of headquartered here.
yeah,
And yeah, our team drives into New York City, having driven out of the Mojave Desert in what
yeah,
seems like, overnight in a
yeah,
truck, and sure, why not?
yeah,
And I kind of like this little action sequence where they just ram the truck into the lobby of the Avengers Tower and get out. And I like this little fight sequence
yeah.
where
It was
I
fun.
yeah, I
Yeah,
like Wyatt Russell dragging the guy's head along the truck with his shield. I
yeah,
like how Wyatt Russell's shield is all beat up and
yeah,
mangled and stuff. I like all these little, like, the grittiness of this movie.
yeah.
And this is
Which
kind of,
what
yeah,
is the shield made of? I guess it's not a big deal, but I was what it's like it's not vibranium,
it's not vibranium, but
but
it's pretty strong. I can't
is it
remember.
like titanium or something or
They say it in Winter Soldier and the
Falcon and Winter
Falcon.
yeah,
Yeah, they say it in there, and I can't remember what it is, but
yeah.
it's something
Yeah,
strong.
something strong, but not like that. But yeah, this was a great fight scene. Again, the hand-to-hand combat and like the cool fight choreography made it so much more fun to watch.
Yeah,
Because and then Valentina comes over the PA system is like, I left the door open for you guys to come in.
yeah,
And so they just like stop fighting.
which is
And then
funny.
yeah, which is
She's like, "Get in
doesn't
the
like
elevator and come upstairs."
yeah,
And they're like,
yeah.
"Oh, okay."
And so they
Uh,
all go upstairs. They come in. She introduces Sentry. Like, is it Bucky that is gonna like Bucky's gonna grab her, or somebody's gonna grab her, and then Sentry stops the person.
yeah.
And then he comes down. He's got blonde hair. He's got his suit on, and she's like, "This is Sentry. He's amazing." And then they have like a fight scene with him.
And he's just the most incredibly powerful
Yeah,
superhero, like, maybe ever in the MCU. It's just
yeah,
like, oh, like, this guy's completely impenetrable. You can't even touch him. Can't
yeah.
even,
You
yeah,
can't even get close to him. Like you
yeah.
punch him and it does nothing. And it was a cool fight scene, but this was the one that I was like, that wasn't very cool because it was very CG. Like
Yeah.
he throws him up, like, but some of it was cool. It's not like it was bad, but it was you just could tell that they were doing a lot of VFX in this sequence.
Well, also, this is kinda like one of the problems of, like, that I had with Captain America: Brave New World, and is, like, Sam Wilson as a character is just sort of,
Yeah,
he's kind of too underpowered for this universe to
yeah,
be such an important character. And then this team is like, even though we've got 3 super soldiers on this team, when you put them up against someone who actually has real powers, it's like, we need a Spider-Man or a Doctor
yeah,
Strange or a Iron Man or a Thor, or, like, we need
yeah,
somebody else here to kind of balance the scales a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's another thing about this movie is we have this crazy climax in New York City, and it's like once again, it's like, where is Doctor Strange? Where is
Yeah.
Spider-Man? At least those 2. At least those 2 guys. What, like,
Yeah.
you telling me Peter Parker's not seeing this? He's not, like, he's
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't
He
know that
got
this is.
sucked in to
Yeah.
the darkness. I
Yeah,
don't know.
he's
Yeah, I
watching Uncle
totally get it.
Ben die over and over again, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
in the
In his
darkness.
shame room.
Yeah, in his little shame room.
But
But yeah,
yeah,
they have this fight scene with Sentry. It just absolutely destroys him.
yeah,
And I do like the way that this continues with like the Thunderbolts, that they go down and
yeah,
Yelena kind of storms off and she's like, "We're not a team. We suck. We're losers. We lost. We can't
yeah,
fight that guy." And kind of like the Thunderbolts, we never won a game. We're
yeah,
losers,
yeah.
and
Well, and that scene was great. And I
yeah,
think the thing that we didn't really talk about as much is Yelena and Bob have a connection pretty
right.
early on. And I really liked this through line throughout the whole movie because
Yeah.
she keeps trying to tell him like, Bob, you don't want to do this. Like she told him initially like you just got to push your feelings way down. It's like kind of a
Mhm.
joke, but they are bonding over their trauma that they have. Um, but she can't really reach Bob. And then yeah, she does. She storms off, and then they have a great scene between David Harbour and Florence Pugh, where she is just talking about like she can't. She's lonely all the time, right? And David Harbour actually does. He kind of drops the whole act of like he really wants to do all this, and he kind of actually comes to his daughter and like consoles her. I thought this was a really great scene. I thought it was good that they took enough time excuse me, to kind of like spend time with this scene and
Yeah.
like her problem that she has. And Florence Pugh gives such a good performance that
Yeah.
like it works really, really well. I
Florence
really enjoyed it.
Pugh, I mean, look, that's another thing that just works about this movie is they've got some of the best actors right now working, and I mean, Sebastian
Yeah.
Stan, I don't particularly care. I don't think that his character has a lot to do in this movie. I kind of wish that
No.
they had done
Yeah.
more with his character in this film and given him more to do. But like Sebastian Stan is like one of the best actors in Hollywood right now, and they
Yeah.
sort of, I think he's kind of wasted in this movie. But Florence Pugh carries this movie really nicely, and
Yeah.
like you said, Luke Polson also does an excellent. Is that his name?
Lewis
Lewis Pullman.
Pullman.
Lewis
Lewis
Pullman.
Pullman. Yeah,
I got it
Lewis Pullman.
completely reversed. Lewis Pullman is also great, and like I said, this is the most I've liked Wyatt Russell in
Mhm.
kind of anything. I don't really care for Wyatt Russell,
Yeah.
and I liked him in this movie more than I have before. But Florence Pugh is kind of our emotional center and heart of this film, and
Yes.
she does a great job carrying us through the narrative. And she's a yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it really fits so well thematically because she's in this whole thing of her character does not feel like she is a good person.
Mhm.
Right, and she is so down on herself and all she's lonely and she doesn't have anyone that she can talk to. She lost her sister, right? And she's still dealing with that and like she just doesn't feel like a good person, right? And
This is
so
also something that we saw Scarlett Johansson's character deal with in the first 3
yeah.
phases.
Yeah.
We saw that Black Widow would occasionally struggle with her past and with things that she had
Yeah.
done, and, like, there's scenes where Steve Rogers tries to console her about, like, she's like, "You don't know, like, who
Yeah.
I am and what I've done," and he's like, "Well, and she tries to help Jeremy Renner with that in Endgame where he's just,
Yeah.
like, because yeah, she knows what
Yeah.
it's like to yeah.
Yeah, she's a very morally gray character,
Mhm.
which makes her more interesting, right? But she is
Yeah.
trying to do something good, so she just feels like she's failed. Like
Mhm.
she has failed. There's nothing that they can do, and she's just a horrible person. And then, David Harbour kind of brings her out of it. And then we have while this is going on, Valentina is talking with Bob Century, and he's like, "Oh, this needs to be a partnership." And she's like, "No, you need to work for me."
Yeah.
And he realizes like, well, why do I have to listen to you? You're just a human. Like I'm the most powerful thing that there is. And she has a kill switch, which she kills him.
And I kinda like this too. I like
Yeah,
her
yeah, yeah.
performance here where she's like, "Ugh, bummer."
Yeah,
She's like, "Man, I was really and she's like, "Alright, this is so annoying that I just
yeah,
spent." But again, this beat could work better if we saw, like, what she actually invested into, but if she actually
yeah. Yeah, there's
had
more of an
spent
investment.
some
Yeah.
time. But anyway, yeah, she uses her kill switch on him and it works. He dies. But I think it's actually her assistant that
Yeah, her
gets
assistant, because he
yeah,
he stops her and she
yeah,
drops it, then the assistant comes and pushes the button, and
pushes the button and
he dies, but then in dying, he becomes the void.
yeah.
And so,
I
like,
love
he's
the
just
design of this character, by the way.
look
I
really
love
cool.
I think it's a really cool looking thing and like a really
Yeah.
simple effect and really visually striking that he
Yes.
just sort of is like this shadow
Yeah.
and with like these like kind of like points of
Tiny
just yeah,
tiny points of light on his eyes,
yeah,
which, I mean, like, that's the thing. You can tell if something is living by reflections in their eyes, which I
yeah,
love that too. It's just a small detail. You can see that there's something in his eyes. So there is something there, right?
yeah,
But he is a
yeah,
shadow, like, and they used it really well. He wasn't like just completely black and like an outline. Like, you could see little features on his face,
mhm.
but the eyes are really like, you see when his eyes open because you see those little points of light. Um,
Yeah, and
and
he basically goes out and starts just vapor. It looks like he's killing people en masse. I like the arrival of the void, kind of when everyone looks
yeah,
up in the sky and there's just like this black shadow. It's very kind of like fallen Superman.
yeah,
And I like the feeling. I just like the visual storytelling here for this final act, like the feeling of
yes.
hopelessness
Oh,
as
yeah.
this basically what the void is doing is just it's just basically super powered depression that it's
Yeah,
just spreading onto New York City, and it just
yeah,
everything that the shadow touches just turns into a
yeah,
shadow,
and
and it
I
yeah,
I gotta say, when I saw this in the trailer, I was like, "That's kinda dumb." Like,
yeah,
that effect was pretty dumb, but within the context of the movie, exactly what you said, like, this huge depression that's just filling this whole all of New York City, it actually worked really, really well, and I
mhm,
was like, "That's really cool." So, it's kinda weird because in the trailer, it looked dumb, but in the context of the movie, it fit so thematically well that I
mhm.
loved it, and I thought it was great.
Especially when we see, like I mean, we have this nice little sequence where the Thunderbolts are kind of, like,
Yeah,
helping people,
I
and it's
love
sort of
this.
like a nice little team up sequence where they're, like, trying to do some good, and US agent catches this giant slab of concrete, and they all have to
Yeah.
lift the slab of
Well,
concrete together,
yeah, and I
and
love I every single character has their own one little sequence. And so Bucky, like, has to, it's in the trailer. He hits the car with his arm and it flips over the people, so he saves them. And then David Harbour has to save this girl, and it, like, he has some, or he saves these people and he's like holding them, getting them to safety. And then Ghost, I can't, what does she do? She has to
this
phase
is the thing is
and get somebody
I do
else
think Ghost is a little bit
under you.
forgotten,
Yeah,
and
she
this
is.
is
Unfortunately. Yeah.
another thing about Taskmaster is, like, it's like, do we have 2 women?
Yeah.
Now we just it's kinda like we just have Florence Pugh in the group, and I'm like, "We got Ghost there, but we're" and
Yeah.
Ghost is, like, the woman of color too, that I'm like, "Come on, like, let's give she's here, she's in
She
the
is, yeah.
let's
She
do
has
more
the
with"
coolest power, which they do use
Right!
very
And
effectively,
they
but yes,
do, yeah,
but her emotionally
yeah.
and, like, acting-wise, definitely kinda left behind. Like,
And I
they
think
could have
that
done more with her.
Taskmaster, like, we definitely in this storyline, we definitely could have done something with Taskmaster
Yeah, they could have. Yeah,
or
could have been cool.
TaskRabbit or what do I Taskmaster.
Taskmaster
Yeah,
TaskRabbit? What's
Task I
where did that come from?
That's like there's an app called TaskRabbit where you
Oh,
people yeah,
okay.
it's like people, like, say, like, "I need someone to put in,
Yeah.
this, like, shelf," and then someone's like, "I'll come over and hammer your shelf
Oh,
in."
nice, okay. Okay.
But, it's like a gig economy thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
got it.
but, yeah, yeah, so they have this nice little thing, but as the void is covering everything in shadows, they're starting to feel
Yeah,
more and more like there's nothing we can
yeah,
we're
we
not a
gotta
strong
help
enough
people
yeah,
get
and we're
out,
not a
yeah.
strong enough group to actually stop this. We do see this little girl that initially gets saved. We see her poofed into
Yeah.
a shadow, and
Oh,
it really
yeah.
feels like, whoa, this movie's like going to a really dark place. And then
I
Florence Pugh kind of
that
like, yeah,
sorry, I'm gonna that when
yeah,
the girl went to a shadow, I was like, "Whoa!" It really does, like, bring you back, like, "Oh my gosh," like,
yeah.
because you don't know if they're dead or not. Like, you
Yeah,
think that they die.
it feels like they are. It feels like in
Yeah,
War of the Worlds when people just kind of go poof and like
yeah,
and
yeah,
vaporize. Yeah, Florence Pugh comes over and kind of gives herself up to the shadow. And this is tying in with her whole character's arc where from the beginning she's been saying she wants out. She doesn't want to
yeah,
do this anymore and she doesn't feel like a
yeah,
good person and she doesn't so she's sort of giving into this like
yeah,
spreading sadness and
yeah,
you know but at least that's what it seems like, but I think there's
Yeah.
also in her mind, she's like, "Maybe there's a way, the only way
Right. Well,
in
and
there is."
yeah, I mean, and this is again like structurally, you want your main character to be at their lowest point right before the climax. So this is
Mhm.
like going into Act 3. She
Yeah.
obviously was in her lowest point, and David Harbour brings her out, but she realizes that I have to get to Bob.
Mhm.
She realizes like I am worth something, but she's like, I've got to get to Bob. That's the only way that we can do this. I mean, she doesn't say any of that, but I
Yeah.
could, you can tell that that's what's going on in her mind. I think she says I have to get to Bob or something, but she
Yeah.
goes into the darkness, and then also thematically, she has to fight her own demons to get what she needs. Like literally, she has to fight her own demons, which I thought was really, really cool. And they never say that, but just thematically, like the whole movie is about depression and overcoming your past
Yeah.
to get to your better self, right? And
Yeah.
everybody kind of has to do that. And
Yeah.
so she goes back to where she killed the person killed her friend, and she finds a way to kind of get out of this room. She gets into another room again where she has to like she's drunk, passed out on the floor, and she kind of has to like fight herself. And she goes through all these different shame rooms. She goes back to one where she's in the the Red Sparrows or whatever, and they're like whipping other people. Anyway, it
I
was
really liked this sequence. Yeah, so we're sort
yeah,
of going through her subconscious, but she's looking for Bob in
yes,
there. This felt like Everything Everywhere All at Once to me, where we're sort of
totally.
like going the climax of that movie is, sort of turning because the whole thing is that the daughter in that movie, her character feels hopeless. And it's very similar emotional climax where the everything bagel that she's trying to sort of
Yeah,
consume the universe with is this feeling that nothing matters, the
yeah,
nothingness that she's being consumed by,
yeah,
and her mother has to go into that sort of spiral with her and pull her
yeah,
out
yeah,
of it. And that's sort of what's going on in this climax. But I really liked to seeing this in a Marvel movie, that we're sort of doing like a dive into the subconscious and the mentality of these characters and
yeah,
what they're dealing with emotionally. It feels like the right place for us to go for our climax.
yeah,
And eventually all of the Thunderbolts go into the shadow with her, and they're all sort of in there together, and then they're all trying to help Bob get out. But
yeah,
Bob's got an even more difficult web to get through
yeah.
than a lot of them, so they've got to get through all of Bob's different shame rooms. And
Yeah, which the
yeah.
meth chicken sign I thought was
Yeah.
pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's like they first have to confront his dad, who is obviously abusive to him and his mother, and then they go into this other room where at one point he was a sign wielding chicken, but he said he was on meth.
Yeah,
And
that yeah,
I like this one worked for
yeah.
me
This is a
because it
good
was
bit.
just so weird. Like they're going through all these rooms, and then they get to like the chicken guy, and he's beating everybody up with the sign, and he's like, "I was on meth,"
Yeah,
and that was funny.
yeah,
I felt it was placed fine, but then
yeah.
like, yeah, it was good, but they,
Yeah. But I really like, yeah, we basically wind up back where, the Void was born, in this
yeah,
area where he at his lowest point, where he was
yes,
so kind of done with existing that he was willing to try anything, and
yeah,
he was willing to even do this highly volatile experiment where he most likely was gonna die, to
yeah,
just see if there was a way out of it.
yeah,
And, he has no option. But what I liked about this sequence was I knew immediately, once Bob started punching the Void, I
yeah,
knew instinctively that's not the way to fix that problem.
yeah,
Like,
exactly,
I know as a person who struggles with mental health myself that, like,
yeah,
it doesn't help when there's something in psychology right now called parts theory, that
mm,
some, I have friends
yeah,
who are therapists who use this modality. My personal therapist does not use this modality,
right,
but I know people who do. And the idea is that your brain is made up of parts, that there are
mm,
different, kind of like Inside Out, like there are
right, right,
different
right, yeah,
components that have different jobs. And uh sometimes when I'm like having a panic attack, or when I'm
yeah,
having a depressive spell, I'll be really hard on the part of me that is panicking, and I'll be like, "Stop,
yeah,
don't, why are
yeah,
and kind of beating them up. And it
yeah,
doesn't work. I have to learn how to be compassionate with those parts of myself,
yeah,
and have to understand that they're just reacting in a way that, they were trained to help me feel safe. And I
yeah,
have to figure out how to communicate with them in a way that's more compassionate. So
yeah,
I liked that. I felt like the emotional heft of this moment
Yeah.
was really solid.
Oh,
That
yeah.
the Thunderbolts all kind of gather around Bob and
Yeah.
hug him and
Yeah.
give him support, kind of rather than, so many Marvel movies are like it's solved by punching, but this movie is
Yeah.
like kind of solved by compassion and softness and love.
Yeah.
But I would, if I had one change to this sequence, what I would change is I think Bob needs to actually hug the void. I think Bob needs to
Mm,
be
interesting.
sought rather than just being pulled away from the void by his friends. He needs to
Yeah.
be, but maybe that's somewhere that this character can go later on. That
Yeah,
like,
I don't think he's done with the Void, 'cause in
yeah,
the comics, the very little that I know, he's always dueling with his identity.
I
He's
think
always
that,
dueling with
yeah,
it, which I actually I totally see what you're saying, and
mhm,
also somebody me also I also have depression and, mental
yeah,
health issues, and I like, this part was very emotional, and I felt it, and I loved it because it wasn't just punching, like,
mhm,
he is punching Bob is punching the void, which is what the void wants, and
mhm,
he starts becoming black, and he's almost consumed by his own self-deprecation,
mhm,
and they get out and they do just give him this hug, which I was like, "Wow, that was crazy." Like, and that is, if you're having a hard time, look to others, and that's kind of like the thing. These people are reluctant to work together. When you have mental health issues, you don't want other people's help. You feel like you can do it yourself, but
yeah.
in reality, you cannot. Like, you need other
Isolation is
help.
Yeah, isolation's one of the most dangerous things
Yeah.
when you're in that really dark place, and sometimes it can't be fixed altogether, so it's not like
Yeah.
Bob's going to heal all of his trauma by
Yes.
hugging the void and fixing all of
Yes.
it, but his community and friends can at least pull him back from the void
Right.
and
It's
pull him out of the
yeah.
spiral,
Yeah,
and
he's
yeah,
taking that step to bring others in to
yeah,
help himself get out of it. So, I thought it worked extremely well.
yeah,
I did find it interesting because this is a very in some ways, this is also very similar to, Brave New World, but it
mhm,
was executed so much better in this movie because in
mhm,
the end, Sam just tells, he tells Harrison Ford just to calm down,
right,
and he calms
yeah,
down. And it was like, so I mean, it's way more involved than that, and
yeah,
it
I was
didn't
gonna
really
say,
work
yeah.
for me, but this one worked so well because everything was leading up to it.
Well, I was gonna say that Bob's struggle with his powers is very similar to, Bruce Banner. It's
Yeah,
very similar to what
yeah,
the Hulk goes through of,
right.
like Banner has this thing inside of him that he's always wrestling with and
Yeah,
trying to figure out, and what was interesting is they were building some kind of arc with that, starting in Avengers: Age of Ultron,
yeah,
going into Thor: Ragnarok, and going into Infinity War. They're building some kind of arc of, like, Banner struggling with the Hulk and trying to
yeah,
find, um some kind of equilibrium. In Thor Ragnarok, he lives as the Hulk for like years on this planet. And, and the Hulk just kind of takes over and we kind of see this tug of war. I feel like it's one of the narrative failings of those first three series to have the the sort of homeostasis of Banner and Hulk happen off screen. That
yeah,
like
yeah,
that when we get to Avengers Endgame, he's fixed it in the interim. He's fixed
yeah,
it between movies and he's just goes, I just figured out how to put them together. And it's like
yeah,
that's a story that you've been building that it's unfortunate that we don't actually get to see that. I hope with Bob going forward,
yes,
they're able to sh- continue showing this wrestling with because
yeah,
obviously like if Bob's going to be on the team and be as powerful as he is,
yeah,
there are going to be times where his powers are going to need to come out, and it's going to be like,
yeah,
who comes out? Does the
yeah,
Void come out, or does Sentry come out?
yeah,
And who's more dangerous?
yeah,
And can they be controlled? Can Bob
yeah,
retain some kind of you
yeah.
know, uh, hand on the
No,
steering wheel when one of these personalities is out?
yeah,
You
and
know,
I think everybody, even I think even the Russos acknowledged that, like, yeah, we wish we could have done more with the Hulk, but it just
yeah.
worked. It worked so much better just to have that so that everything else could work. But yes, hopefully moving forward, they don't gloss over that with Bob because that's the Jekyll and Hyde story is always a good one that you can kind of play out, and I hope they do. I think they will. I think they will play it out. But
I
yeah,
think
I mean,
Bob's is interesting because there's like three. It's like
yeah,
this guy
there's
here who's
Sentry,
yeah,
Bob, and then
yeah,
Void.
uh-huh, yeah.
Yeah.
And Bob's trying to rein in both of these extreme aspects of
Yeah.
his mental health.
Yeah.
Uh,
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this was a whole great sequence. This
Yeah.
end, this climax is not just. I mean, it was exciting because they
Mhm.
had to get through these different shame rooms and they had to save each other. But the fact that they end on a hug of just
Mhm.
like pulling him off, and that's where everything like he decides to look to his friends. They all end up back in New York, and then the darkness kind of goes away and everybody comes back,
And we
right?
realize he didn't kill a whole bunch of people.
Yeah,
He just sort
yeah,
of put them all in their own individual shame rooms. But
yeah,
yeah, then they all sort of they walk around kind of like a curtain together, and
yeah,
on the other side of it is Julia Louis-Dreyfus with the press and everything, and she announces them as the new Avengers to try to kind of
yeah,
save her own butt. Like, look, this
yeah,
I put this all together and I
yeah.
organized this new team. And
I
so
actually liked that. I thought that was pretty. It was
yeah,
a great way for her to like manipulate everything to her advantage, which is kind of her own
yeah.
little superpower. But yeah, I thought it was pretty funny.
And so they're the new Avengers and Bob,
Yeah.
and
Well, and the thing that I love too, so she says like, "Here's the new Avengers." Everybody claps, and they're like, "What?" And then Florence Pugh goes up to Julia Louis Dreyfus and is like, "We own you now,"
yeah,
and you could see it on her face. She's like, "Oh crap!" And
mhm,
I thought that was actually pretty great. I
yeah,
really I like that. But it's also kind again, this kind of goes into the joke of it, like, "Oh, it was an accident. They're the Avengers. They're not really the Avengers."
yeah. Because like an Avengers movie, if this was actually an event, and that's the thing is like I this is not an Avengers movie. This is
No, it's not.
Thunderbolts.
Yeah, it's
It's
Thunderbolt.
Thunderbolts.
Yeah,
And if an Avengers movie, just it has to have more characters, period. Like Sam
yeah,
Wilson needs to be here,
yeah,
Tom Holland needs to be here, Benedict Cumberbatch needs to be here,
yeah,
the Guardians need to show up, like we just
mhm,
need Ant-Man needs to like we just need more
yeah,
people here
yeah,
for this to be an Avengers movie. This is Thunderbolts the same way that the Fantastic Four, they're these separate groups now. The
yeah, yeah,
Guardians, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and Thunderbolts will be their own thing. We have two post-credit sequences. The first one is kind of just like a joke one where
yeah.
Red Guardian is trying to get a woman in the store to look at a box of Wheaties that has the new Avengers on it,
That's pretty funny.
and he wants her to notice that he's on the box. But
Yeah,
the second one is the more
yeah,
important one to the plot, and
yeah,
I feel like this is a little weak when Bucky comes in and says, "I talked to Sam about us all teaming up with the Avengers and it didn't go well." And I'm like,
yeah,
"Why?
yeah.
Why did why did that not go well?
You
Like
guys had
what?"
a whole show together. Why are you
Yeah.
not friends anymore? Like,
Yeah, I
what?
feel like that's a little bit weak to just sort of be
Yeah,
like, "Ugh, Sam did not wanna see me." And I'm like,
yeah,
"Why? Like,
yeah.
what?"
What'd you
Like
do? Yeah.
yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, it was pretty weak, but yeah, Sam is like he is creating his own Avengers and he's suing them for the copyright, which was weird, but
Which I think is weird and petty, and, like, I don't get why Sam Wilson's just like, I'm not gonna be in a team with you guys." I
yeah.
like,
I
yeah,
I imagine that this is gonna be one. I wonder if this is gonna be one where like in the Avengers movie, it will have all happened off screen. And they're
sure.
like, and I kind of hope it is that way because I'm like, who cares about copyright? Like what's the big deal? Like,
Yeah, but they're in the Avengers Tower. They've got,
yeah,
like, it looks like they've got some funding,
yeah, they
and,
do. And they're all in new suits and stuff. And
yeah, and Bob's trying
yeah,
to keep his powers at bay. He doesn't really do anything. He just kind of
yeah.
sits in the corner. But obviously, we know if he's on the team that we're going to
Oh,
see
yeah.
more of these beings. But they get an alert from their computer that an interdimensional spaceship is inbound into Earth, and we see this spaceship on the screen. And they go, "Ooh, cool spaceship." It turns, and we see the Fantastic Four logo on the
Yeah.
spaceship. And this is probably the most like phase 1 through 3 type credit stinger that I've seen in a
Yeah.
long time. It's
Yeah.
been a while since I've seen a credit stinger that I was like, "Okay, cool. I can actually see how
Yeah.
this will lead into the next thing that's coming out, which is
Right.
Fantastic Four." Like,
Right.
remember the stinger at the end of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, how like Charlize Theron showed up and
Yeah.
it was just like, who is that and what is going on there? Or the stinger at the end of Eternals where Harry Styles showed up and it was like, what's going like that? Like,
Yeah.
there are so many end credit stingers to Marvel movies that have happened since Endgame that have just been nothing, that have
Yeah.
just been that have
Yeah.
and this was the first one where I was like, okay, I can actually see
Yeah.
how this
Yeah.
will be a direct tie-in to the
Yeah.
next project. And that feels like the franchise getting back on track somewhat.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I totally agree. It is interesting though. I'm thinking like, okay, so this is they're coming from another dimension, which I figured the Fantastic Four would be in another dimension,
right.
or another multiverse or whatever. But I also makes me think like, okay, well, does their whole world get destroyed? Like, is that
I
what's
know.
gonna happen? But
That's the whole thing
we'll
about
see.
I just don't think that the MCU has handled the multiverse narrative very well so far. To
No.
me, the way that they've done it makes the Prime or like makes whatever it is, 616 or whatever it
Yeah.
is that we're
Yeah.
in, makes it just seem kind of inconsequential. It just seems like another universe. It
Yeah.
just seems
Yeah.
kinda like, okay, this is the universe we care about because this is the universe where all of our characters are, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It just feels a little yeah, but,
Yeah. I totally agree.
again, it's why I'm kinda like, I'm not sure that I'm as locked back in as I once was, but I did enjoy watching this movie, thought there were some strong aspects to it. Let's
Yeah.
get into our scores for
Okay.
Thunderbolts asterisk. We do, ratings on this show out of 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. We give a technical rating, that's for how well the movie was constructed technically. We give a rating for the ending, how well we feel like the movie stuck the landing. We give a score for rewatchability, a score for cultural impact, and a subjective score. So, Kramer, what is your technical rating for Thunderbolts?
My technical rating is an 8. I thought that there's as we went over with our nitpicks, there's definitely a lot of things that, are kind of you got to make a jump for.
Yeah,
But I think the fact that they really went for I think the screenplay is really kind of pushing it over the edge for me because they went for a mental health issue and they really accomplished it, which was great. And then I really did like the set pieces. I really liked the action, the production design, and the cinematography was really good. So I think overall, I mean, it was a really well made movie.
Yeah, I gave it a 7.5, so I'm just underneath where you're at. I think
Nice.
that this was constructed really well, for the most part, and like I said, it was constructed well enough for me to just enjoy it,
Yeah.
which at this
Yeah.
point in the MCU is, not something I can always do while I'm I have a hard time turning my brain off and not just constantly going, "Why'd they do it like that?" or "Why'd they do it" I was actually able to just enjoy this movie. I really liked its, climax. I felt like the
Yeah.
the movie built up to it nicely and did a good job tying everything together thematically. I liked that the movie moved at a nice pace and was just kind of fun. I liked that it felt like it had its own identity, but I do think that there was a lot of just messiness when it comes to the script and
Mhm.
certain
Mhm.
things that are always going to be there with Marvel movies.
Yeah.
How about the ending?
The ending I gave an 8.5. Just the fact that it all led up to it. So it was all very structurally and thematically set up extremely well. And
Yeah.
then the payoff of them instead of having a huge fight, it really just became a personal climax that worked really, really well for me. So
Yeah.
I gave it an 8.5.
I gave it an 8, and initially I gave it a 7 because I didn't like the asterisk was the new Avengers because I was like,
Yeah.
"I don't like that twist." But I like your take on it, and I think you're
Yeah.
right. So I decided to throw my take of that out
Okay.
and, bump it up to an 8. I do like this emotional climax. I like the way that it ties in with what the movie wanted to be about from the jump, and I
Yeah.
think that it's a much better version of this than anything else I think we've seen in the MCU. I
Yeah.
think it's pretty strong. I do just I knock points off of the ending for just kind of maybe the post credit sequences and stuff that
Hmm.
happens after that where I just kind of go like, okay, I'm still left with this like what now with this team and who are they?
Yeah.
They didn't really demonstrate a strength that I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe I could go up to who knows? Maybe I
Yeah.
could go up higher.
You're
But
good. That
how
works.
about rewatchability?
Rewatchability, I did a 7.
Mhm.
I am a little worried that as I rewatch it, those little things might bug me a little bit more. But it's definitely there's a lot of fun sequences,
Yeah.
and I think you could definitely rewatch it and enjoy it a lot, and hopefully the theme comes through more, um, and that kind of can live on. So I gave it a 7.
Yeah, I gave it a 7 as well on rewatchability, and this is my first movie in the Marvel world that I've wanted to see. Like, I actually have the feeling that, like, I might go see this again before it
Yeah,
leaves theaters,
yeah,
and that's the first time I've felt that way about a Marvel movie for a long time, where I'm like, I
nice.
might go give this another watch before it's out of cinemas, because there's a lot here to look at and to kind of pay attention to. So I think that there
Yeah.
would be a lot of things that might jump out to me on a rewatch.
Yeah.
Um, Cultural impact.
I did a 7.5. I don't know if I can do an 8, but I think that it did really well in gaining more interest in
Yep.
the MCU, or bringing some more interest back. And I think it's also a really well structured film. And there's a lot of really good craft in this film, so I think it will live on that way. But I just don't, we'll see how it goes in the long run.
Yeah, I'm at a 7 as well, or you're at 7.5. I'm at a 7 because again, I don't really know. I think right now it is sort of a nice like it feels like every year Marvel has like one movie that's kind of like, "Oh, okay, that's pretty good." And I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
going to be this one where people kind of go, "Oh, that feels like maybe something that we can put some stock into, put some faith
yeah,
into." Last year, maybe it was Deadpool and Wolverine,
yeah,
and this year maybe it's this one, but we'll see
yeah.
how Fantastic Four does. Maybe they'll get on a roll here.
Maybe.
Subjective score.
My subjective score is an 8. I really had a lot of fun. It was, and the payoff of the story was really good, and it overcame a lot of those, nitpicks or things that are kind of annoying.
Yeah, mine was 7.5, and
Nice.
same thing. Like I really enjoyed this movie. I was surprised, even though I expected to enjoy this movie, and I was surprised still at how much I liked it and how much it worked for me in the moment.
Yeah,
Later on, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh boy, there is a lot of stuff in there that's pretty
yeah, yeah,
silly. But that's always going to be the case with these kinds of films. I was just happy that the filmmakers seemed like they were allowed to just focus on making a good movie, and they did that.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, cool. What did you think about Thunderbolts? Asterisk. Let us know in the comments. What do you think's coming up next for the Fantastic Four? Give us your predictions. And speaking of what's coming up next week, we're going to kind of do a little Tom Cruise run here, going into the release of The Final Reckoning, of Mission
Yeah,
Impossible: The Final Reckoning. So next week we're going to go back in time and watch
Minority Report.
Minority Report, Steven Spielberg, Tom Cruise, a classic.
Yeah,
And then we'll probably do Mission Impossible 3 after that and keep
yes,
it rolling. We're just going to be on a Tom Cruise train, or
yeah.
Tom Cruise
Trilogy.
cruise, a Tom
Oh, Tom
Cruise
Cruise
cruise.
cruise. Oh, I like that. Yeah,
Uh
Tom Cruise cruise.
3 weeks in a row leading up to Dead Reckoning, or Final Reckoning. And yeah, so if you want to watch along with us, watch Minority Report this week and then you can follow along.
Yeah,
So we'll
that'd
see
be
you
great.
then.
Bye bye.
You say the final bye-bye.
Bye bye.